What's going on, guys? So the project today is an interesting one, and it's one you all knew that we would have to do. And we're actually reaching out for help to see if you can help us locate something. So that's the 73 Ford Super Camper Special F350 one-ton truck. Has dual tanks. It has the front tank and the rear tank, both of them a little under 20 gallons. Right here is the fuel tank. So we dropped it out. It wasn't as easy as I guess we thought it would be, because some of the hoses here have to come off and be loosened before you can remove the tank, but we got it out, no problem. Super nasty. We told you that there was a leak, and you can see where it accumulated here. I think a lot of folks who said it's probably the ethanol that's mixed in the new fuel that probably acted as a solvent, which gummed up some of this coating that was inside of here and ended up causing it to come off as like a tar. But we did spot several cracks around the fill and the vents. You see a crack there, and this is cracked all the way around. So what we're supposing happened is that the fuel's going in, it's dripping out here, running down here, and it's collecting all this mud, gunk, and all the stuff that's coming off inside of the tank, dripping out the bottom. We found a used tank on eBay. The guy wants like $400. It looks as if it's in worse condition than this, and of course there's no guarantee that it's not going to have a crack on it or some other issue as well. Do any of you know of a place that we can find a tank to replace this tank with that's in great shape? Or have any of you fixed a plastic tank before from the 70s? So this is not a new modern tank that's made out of polyethylene. This is a old-fashioned tank that's probably made out of polyethylene, but it's got cracks going around here. Now, some people are going to say JB weld it or throw something on there. I don't think that's going to be a long-term fix for this, especially considering you can't get to these spots once the tank's inside there. So whatever fix we do needs to be a permanent fix. And I'm sure there's some folks who are on the channel, maybe there's some type of a chemical engineer who's on the channel who knows exactly what we could do to restore this tank. The only areas that we've seen the cracks are right here, but once we get this tank degreased and cleaned off and we're able to really inspect it, we'll look for any other spots that might be cracked. But I am leaning on you all who watch my channel to find a solution to either not having to replace the tank by fixing it, or perhaps you have a neighbor who just has an empty tank from a 73 Ford Super Camper Special sitting in their backyard that they've been dying to get rid of, or you know, a connection for it. Anyways, leave a comment below. Shoot me an email if you want to do it privately, but definitely would like to see if we can get our hands on a tank, and we're willing to pay for it. I just don't want to pay $400 for an ugly used tank that's in worse condition than the one we have. So while I'm recording all this over here, another thing I'm doing over here is making my pot of coffee. So got to have that aroma of coffee whenever I'm filming. If you want to see some of the gear I'm using. See, a lot of folks just think that I have like the bare basic minimum setup, and I really don't. I have quite a bit of stuff here whenever I want to record and use stuff. I got a slider, got my big tripod, got my small tripod. That's my grab and go tripod. I just grab it, move it wherever I want, and I can get it positioned very quickly. Have my big table here. This table, being the size it is, just helps me out so much. And man, I really appreciate when my wife thinks of things like this, and she's like, you know what, I saw you struggling, let me see if I can fix that for you. So she got that. And then way over there, I got my other filming area with some box lighting, some things to diffuse the lighting a little bit, make it a little bit easier. But the LED lighting we have in here does a pretty good job of showing me what I need to see, and I can correct everything else in post-production. So anyways, just want to give you a quick view of that, and the fact that I usually have coffee brewing somewhere. So when I say perfect spot for a coffee maker, I also mean in the shop, perfect spot for a coffee maker. And boy, do I love me some genuine ranch style coffee. All right, we're gonna get back to it. Okay, so we're back, and this isn't really round two because the first one wasn't really a comparison video when we talked about these tools. There are so many comparison videos out there on power tools and how they stack up. Some of them very scientific, very, very structured, and designed to give you some really granular details in terms of the performance of each tool versus its competitor. But in this video, we're not going to try to do that. What I'm going to ask you is the last time you went to Home Depot, Northern Tools, Lowe's, and you actually held a competing tool in your hand. And I say this because when you look at these different tools with these different battery packs on them, you would kind of think that the handle grip looks the same on all of them, except for the design, of course. The way they do the padding, the way they do the little design to make it look kind of uniquely theirs. With the DeWalt's definitely being kind of the most sophisticated looking, whereas the Milwaukee's and the Makita looking a little bit more basic. That said, though, have you actually been to any of the stores held a competing brand in your hand to evaluate how that tool feels in your hand. Because what's interesting to me is even though they all look very, very similar, they all feel a little different. They all balance a little different. And I think that's probably the reason that drove me to DeWalt initially, was because of the fact that the tools in my hand feel a little bit more comfortable than the Milwaukee or the Makita. And the way to kind of show this is if I grab a DeWalt tool, the way it conforms to my hand, in my opinion, is just a little bit more comfortable. The balance, and what I consider to be the balance when you hold it right here below the trigger, it balances out really well also. If I hold the equivalent Milwaukee, which is the Fuel, it feels, not only does it feel significantly heavier, but the grip feels fatter at the top. The grip feels fatter right here. And if you compare that to the DeWalt, you can actually see how the grip feels a little fatter up here. And some people may prefer that. If you got larger hands, this may be something that's preferable to you. But for me, where I noticed that I don't really care for how this feels is this back area right here, because it's fatter right there. And it doesn't perform like any worse because of that. It actually performs better, arguably, than the DeWalt XR. But it's a heavier product for sure, and it definitely has a chunkier feel to the grip, whereas this one conforms a little bit better. They both have 5 amp hour batteries on them, and the XR is definitely a lighter weight tool. It's just a little bit lighter, but it is noticeable. Now, this Milwaukee, which is their more compact line, doesn't have that same chunkiness to the top. So if I look at both of these, you can actually see where this one has a little bit more of a taper to it versus the Fuel. Now, I don't know exactly why that is. I don't know why they designed the grips to be a little different, but this Milwaukee definitely feels a little bit better in the hand versus this one, even though there's more rubberized coverage around this grip. And that might be where it comes from, but really the addition is only this side section right here versus this hard piece of plastic right there. But I can tell you that the lighter weight feel of this, the fact that they still give you a steel chuck on even their more entry-level tool versus the higher-end tool, which you always kind of believe have steel chucks on them. And that's versus DeWalt or Makita, which definitely put plastic chucks on their lower tools and steel chucks on their higher-end tools. But I can tell you that from a comfort ability, the ability for you to grab a tool and use it and feel comfortable using it, I kind of prefer the way the DeWalt and even the Makita feel in the hand versus the Milwaukee. And that could possibly equate to even using the tool longer without hand discomfort. I don't really know, but have you been to a competing store and actually felt the different tools? And I kind of talk about this when we're talking about trucks as well. Have you been to a competing brand and driven a competing product? Or are you so fiercely brand loyal to something that you've used that you're not willing to see how another tool might work for you? Now for me, again, switching over, this is kind of a hard one for me because I counted my DeWalt tools and I got 48 of them. 48 tools that use this 20-volt battery, which is absolutely insane. So it's really difficult for me to completely switch over to another brand. Even if I like Milwaukee or Makita better, I probably wouldn't switch just because of that. I'm trying Milwaukee tools, so I've only purchased their drills and drivers. I don't have any of their other tools. Makita, I only have this drill and another drill, and I tried to buy the higher end version, but I accidentally bought the brushed version of it. I wanted to get the brushless version, so I got to take that one back. But the DeWalt tools for me have performed really well, but ultimately I stick with it because I have so many batteries and so many tools and everything is interchangeable. Just like if you're a Milwaukee customer, just like if you're a Makita customer. You kind of stick with it because you have to stick with it. But that's my next question for you. Have you gone and checked out the competition to see if you actually like it better or not, if it feels more comfortable? And if it does, would you consider moving? Would you switch to Milwaukee from DeWalt if you felt the tools performed better, were more comfortable, and they just work better for your trade? Or would you stick with DeWalt just because you've bought so many of them, kind of like I do? Anyways, I'd love to know your opinion.